Just get right into it about your trip and about all that you got going on in your new book.
I'd love to. On the Trail of the Nephilim, it's a book that I really never thought I would write. In fact, I thought I was pretty much done with the whole Nephilim thing. I thought I had, finished with the series. I mean, I've written the Nephilim trilogy, which was published by Zondervan, and we bought the rights back, and it's coming out soon, all 3 books under one cover. The series hit the bestseller list on CBN, the first 2 books in the series anyway. But after that, Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, and even the Alien Interviews deals with the Nephilim, and of course the Cosmic Chess Match dealt with the Nephilim once again. And so I thought I was done with this thing, and the impetus, the connection was I was getting ready to go to a conference in Ohio, and it was a friend of mine, actually, Russ Dizdar, who's another author and researcher, a colleague, gave me a shout on the telephone and said, "Hey, L.A., do you know where you're going?" I said, "Well, yeah, I'm going to Ohio." He starts laughing. He goes, "No, do you know where you're going?" I said, "Yeah." "What's up, Russ? I'm going to Ohio." And he starts laughing, and he goes, "You by your computer?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, type in Fritz Zimmerman." So I type in Fritz Zimmerman, up comes this book called Fallen Angels in the Ohio Valley. And I just went, "What?" And immediately, I got a copy of the book. I flew out to Ohio, and that was really the beginning of how On the Trail of the Nephilim started. And I realized, and I never read Steve Quayle's books before, and so I got Quayle's book, and he had listing after listing of giant skeletons, as does Fritz Zimmerman. Fritz Zimmerman does a really very good job of documenting the mounds and what came out of the mounds in the late 1800s into the 20th century. So it's very, very interesting. And people are pulling out
you mentioned Ohio, in Ohio River Valley. We actually here in Evansville, we have angel mounds. We're on Ohio River Valley as well. Have you heard? Is there anything about those in there?
I have not looked at Angel Mound myself. I've been to the Great Circle Mound, the Octagon Mound, and of course the Serpent Mound in and around Newark, Ohio, and Chillicothe. And I was just astounded by what I saw, and that led into lots and lots of research. And from there, we went to Peru. And the reason why we went to Peru was that we realized that many of these sites that were investigated, let's say, over 100 years ago, are closed down. You can't, there's nothing to see. They're sanitized. Anything that was there is long since gone. And we kept hearing over and over and over again that the artifacts were shipped back to the Smithsonian, where in some cases they just disappear. People would follow up, "Oh, we never received them." "Oh, isn't that convenient?" And so the whole idea of On the Trail of the Nephilim was, and some of this is based on Fritz's work, Fritz Zimmerman's work, who theorized that one of the Nephilim tribes, known as the Amorites, came across thousands of years ago and set up shop in Ohio Valley. And as bizarre as that may seem to be, the more I investigate, the more I truly believe that, yes, what happened was that Joshua and Caleb, and we all know this from Numbers, pressed into the Levant, or what is known as the Promised Land. There they found the Nephilim, and that's from Numbers 13. And the mandate goes out to wipe them all out. And that's what they were doing. As they were going in, they were wiping everything out. And, of course, these are fallen angelic, or the progeny of fallen angels and the women of earth. This is why the mandate is there. And they're there in the Promised Land. I address all this in the Cosmic Chess Match because the fallen one, the fallen cherub, Satan the dragon, can see through time further, and he knows that the Most High God wants this land. That's why they're there. He wants this land. Not sure why he wants that land, but he wants that land. And so what's interesting is all these Nephilim tribes are there. And the theory that we're going under is that as Joshua and Caleb came into the Promised Land and began to push against these Nephilim tribes, and in some cases wipe them out outright, just completely annihilate them, burn everything, men, women, children, animals, everything. And that sounds like genocide, and it is genocide unless we plug in the Nephilim, which is this demonic hybrid it's never supposed to be. It was never part of God's plan. And this is what people don't get. This is why the mandate is so severe. Well, the Nephilim tribes see what's going on, and guess what? They flee. Some flee, we believe, into the Ohio Valley and populate some of the Americas and spread out. Others go down to South America. And we believe that what we found in Peru is the remnant of a Nephilim tribe that settled in the Paracas area. There were elongated skulls, one parietal plate instead of a two that a normal skull should have. It's not the result of cradle headboarding. We saw many cases where the cradle headboarding of the infants was done. That's when they take material and they put it next to the infant's skull and then bind the skull, and as the child grows, you get this shape. But we could see the difference between the cradle headboarding and the skulls which are not cradle headboarding, and one of them, of course, is the fact that the ones we saw only had one parietal plate. A normal human skull is consisting of 4 plates, the frontal plate, 2 parietal, which is on top, and the occipital, the one in the rear. And they are stitched together with what are called sutures. Now, they're not needle and thread, but they're sutures, and that's what holds these plates together as the skull grows together. And what we found, to our astonishment, was many of these elongated skulls only had 1 parietal plate, not the typical 2 parietal plates that a normal human being should have. And what we realized is that there seems to be genetic manipulation going on in this area being conducted by an outside agency. And this is why we went to Peru. And we were absolutely astounded by what we saw, what we observed, what we were able to handle, photograph, weigh, and that's why we went. And that's sort of all that information went into On the Trail of the Nephilim Volume 1. Well, guess what? On the Trail of the Nephilim Volume 2, I've already started writing, and I have found some startling information, which I can't say yet because the book's not even close to being ready for print. It won't come out till next year. But when I say startling information, I mean startling information. And I'm writing about all this, of course, and lots of photographs, lots of documentation, and I'm on the trail. It's really a blast.
Yeah, it sounds like a blast. Now, you was actually able to get hair samples and a few things like that to also do some testing on too, wasn't you?
Well, we did, and this is what's fascinating about this, and I'm glad you guys brought that up. It looks like you've done your homework. My hat's off to you. What was fascinating about this, really, really fascinating about this, was there was this elongated skull that was found in the Chongos necropolis. And the Chongos necropolis is perhaps one of the most bleak places I have ever witnessed in my life. It is an area that goes for miles, and it looks like the Sahara. It is bleak, it is desert, and nothing grows there. It gets less than 1/4 of an inch a year, and sometimes not even that. I mean, nothing grows there. I mean, nothing. And pictures of that are in the book. And as we were walking in the Chongos necropolis, I looked down and I saw these bits of pottery. And then I looked closer, and there's human remains everywhere, bleached white bones of skeletons buried thousands of years ago. It is really bizarre. We are going to Peru. I'm leading a tour there. Hopefully, we've got like 6, 7 people that have signed up. We need a minimum of 10 before the tour is a go. And
really? Wow,
yeah.
I mean, let me ask you this: what's it cost to go on the tour?
Well, the cost is $3,000. That's not including airfare, but that's all food, lodging, except for dinners, and everything else. So it's all.
Man, that would be incredible.
Yeah, that would be awesome. We definitely got to start saving for that.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we are going in late January into February 2014, God willing. And Chongos is one of the places where we're going to visit. Out of the Chongos necropolis, or the graveyard, we found this elongated skull with what we thought was reddish-brown hair. We were able to take a small sample of the hair, which had fallen off. It's there, and it's displayed in a private museum in Paracas. And we were able to collect. The curator allowed us to take samples that had just fallen off the thing, so that we weren't like cutting it or anything like that. It just was there in the case. So we took the hair, and there's a machine that's called Raman spectroscopy, and the results of this we showed in Watcher 6, but we did it very quickly. I'm paying the scientists who worked the samples to write a report, a full report, which will be in volume 2. What's interesting about the Raman spectroscopy is that it will plot the molecular structure of whatever it is it's examining on a graph, and so you can see by the slope whether you've got material that looks the same, that's made of the same composition type thing. So we took a human hair, a dyed human hair, the red hair from Paracas, okay? Those were 3 samples: human hair, dyed human hair, red hair from Paracas. So the human hair is our control sample, obviously.
Yes.
The dyed human hair is, we're going to see what dyed human hair looks like and see if, in fact, it relates back to the red hair that we see in Paracas. The 4th hair, which I didn't know about, which just blew us away completely. There was a man who claimed to have been abducted by aliens. And when I use the word aliens, these are not beings, in my opinion, from Zeta Reticuli or the Pleiades. They are interdimensional beings who harken back to the Genesis 6 that you mentioned earlier, the fallen angelic hosts, and they are conducting this breeding program, this genetic modification, if to use a word. And this man was abducted. He was forced to have sex with a hybrid who was a female who had long, stringy, blondish, almost white hair. And when he awakened in the morning, there were several strands of the hair on his person. He had the presence of mind to take it. And so this hair is now being viewed under Raman spectroscopy. So the first hair, the human hair, the slope, it's plotted on the graph. It just kind of comes in the left side, does like a little rise, and goes back down. The dyed human hair comes in and just immediately starts arcing upwards and leaves the graph. It just starts arcing upwards and goes off, because that's the dyed human hair. So the dyed human hair really resembles, or doesn't resemble, the normal human hair at all, because it's been chemically altered, and that's what we should see. What's interesting here is the red hair from the Paracas mummy, which, by the way, was at least 2,000 years old, perhaps older. I'm being conservative when I say 2,000 years. It could have been 3,000 years, okay? Because we know that's when the Paracas people show up. So the 3,000-year-old hair from the Paracas mummy, that's what it was, and the modern hair, the white hair, from this alien hybrid that this man was forced to have sex with, they come in at the same place on the graph. The hybrid hair is slightly above, and they begin to slope. And when you look at the graph, the slopes of these two hairs, they track every little jot and tittle on the graph. It is absolutely unbelievable. And I've shown this to people who know what Raman spectroscopy is, and that's why we're doing a full-blown report. There is a definite genetic link between the white hair from the alien hybrid being and the skull that was over 2,000 years old. There's a definite link. This is like a first. No one else on this planet has ever done. I'm saying that not to pat myself on the back, but this is hardcore science. No one's ever done this before. Nobody's ever done this. And here we are in the lab. You know, this is like trailblazing stuff. I mean, it really is trailblazing stuff. And it's hardcore science. And there's a definite relationship between the hybrid hair from modernity, the modern era, from a female hybrid with long, white, stringy hair, and that red-haired skull that we found in Paracas. There's a definite genetic correlation between the two.
That's amazing, man. And I remember you talking about that, and the guy that claims to have had sex with the hybrids, that's happened to him several times, and we're starting to see that a lot more, people claiming this, and it's really interesting the way, you know, the whole alien thing's being brought up. I know you were on at least one season of the History Channel's Ancient Alien show that they had, and it's so common. I mean, how common is it? I mean, in your studies that you've seen, is it exponentially growing, the amount of people that claim to have been abducted and all this stuff? Is that growing, or has it always pretty much been the same, just kind of plateaued?
Hard to say, because the numbers are very difficult. A lot of people live with this and never come forward with it. I get emails from people that have been abducted. We're working with a man that has been abducted since he was 5 years old.
Wow.
And he's just dealing with it now. and this is all in Watcher 7. We went in and we took X-rays of his area where he claimed to have an implant. Sure enough, there it is. Then we went and did a CAT scan of it, and sure enough, on the CAT scan, there it is. We took a Gauss meter, which measures magnetism, and it's magnetized in that area. So that shows that something is going on. It's also giving off some sort of radio frequency around 330 gigahertz, which is kind of bizarre. And we hope to take this implant out of this person in the next, 4 to 6 months in an operating theater and film all that, and then take it right into a lab and do testing on that. So, I mean, this is all hardcore science, and we're trying to show in fact, Watcher 7 is called physical evidence, and that's what we really show in Watcher 7. We're in the lab. We're looking at things under scanning electron microscopes with the EDX feature, which shows what the object we're looking at is made out of. One thing I'll tell you for Watcher 7, which is just a mind blower. Again, this is hardcore physical evidence. A man claimed to have been abducted, all right? So Dr. Roger Lear found this case, and everything was magnetized in the house. The kitchen cabinets were magnetized. The Formica countertop was magnetized. The avocado tree was magnetized. You can't do that. Can't do it.
That's incredible.
The man, this is all in 7. The bed where the man was abducted, he was abducted, his wife wasn't. On his side of the bed, it's magnetized. On hers, it's not.
Wow, man. And this
better.
is the thing that, go ahead, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
That's all right. It gets better. He took a fluorescent lamp because we've learned that these entities seem to emit, when they're around, they leave traces that will fluoresce. He found a 4-fingered handprint on the wall.
Wow.
Right near the window, right next to the bed. The owner of the house allowed him to take the drywall, the wall board, and cut it out with the handprint. We took that down into the lab. We fluoresced it, very plain to see. The fingertips are bulbous. They're not like human hands. The fingertips bulb out, almost like Gollum's hands in The Lord of the Rings. That's kind of what it looks like.
Wow.
And we took a sample, and we put that into the scanning electron microscope, and then did an EDX sampling of it. And I had the technician, I asked him twice, it's all in the film, I said, is this human? And he looked at me and he said, no, whatever it is not human. It does not bear any resemblance to what we should find looking at a scanning electron microscope with an EDX attachment feature to it. We should be seeing this, and this, and we're not. And I nailed it. I said, look, you're trying to tell me that this is not human, right? And he said, yeah, whatever it is, it's not human. So again, this is in Watcher 7. It's hardcore physical evidence. By the way, you're the first show that I've gone on and talked about this.
Wow, we greatly appreciate it.
We do, man.
And I know, I can't remember if it's 1, 2, or 3 where you was talking about the initial, the main guy. You was talking about the doctor who, the guy had the thing in his I think it was his arm or whatever, and the doctor didn't want to operate, and then finally he was talked into pulling it out. And once you got it out and you got to talking to him, you found out that this thing has a clock speed, right. For a computer or whatever.
Right.
And then it blew me away when it said that it was changing its DNA, that it was actually reconstituting the DNA that this individual that this thing was in. There was cold chills when I heard that, because I was thinking that when you read the Book of Enoch and you study about this subject, it's like, from the very beginning when Satan was trying to corrupt the DNA, corrupt the bloodline of not just humans but everything, and then here, you're finding physical scientific proof of some sort of whatever technology or whatever you would call it of this thing actually redoing. It was the most astounding thing that I ever heard in my life. I was blown away.
Well, and that's our theory. We know, unfortunately, we have not had the money to test this. In other words, there's only one way to do it, and it's very difficult to do. You'd have to take a sample of a person before they had the implant, then take a sample, when they got the implant, and then wait a year and take another sample. We haven't been able to do any of that. What we do see is that whatever this thing is, it's a very, very complex, highly advanced computer machine. Whatever it is, it attaches to the body at the micro level. Nerve endings wrap around this thing. There's a grayish secretion which covers the implant and keeps the body from eliminating it, because the body normally would want to eliminate anything like this. And this like grayish substance, which by the way you can't cut with a scalpel. So what the heck is that? And we found out that the same gray coating is inside the chip and used to insulate the carbon nanotubes from the rest of the chip, whatever that is. And we're down like 40,000 times. We're down around 1,500 atoms in width. We're way down. Scanning electron microscope, looking at carbon nanotubes, looking at what we think is how this thing docks to the human host with the nerve endings. I mean, you could actually see a remnant of a nerve ending wrapped around some kind of like projectile outside of the chip, which enabled some sort of interface between the two. We also know from this guy that we've been discussing and talking with that he wasn't aware that he had it. Okay, and he knew he'd been abducted, but like with many of these guys, these people run from it their whole lives. They don't deal with it. They never get help. So finally, he's trying to get some help. I've given him my books. We'll see what happens. And now, he's the one that we're going to hopefully take this thing out of him soon. But he tells us a story. He was riding his motorcycle, and all of a sudden, and he says it very graphically, it was like someone took a railroad spike, his words, and drove it with a sledgehammer into the side of his knee. That's the level of pain. The pain was so great, he ditched his bike. He couldn't he ditched his bike. That's how bad the pain was. And he's like rolling on the pavement, and he said it happened like 2 or 3 times in the course of a month in different places, and then it just stopped. And so now, he wants it out. He realized that something's here. And when we were in the lab with him, that's when he opened up really for the first time to anyone, as far as we know, and started telling us, it started when I was 5 years old. They came and got me.
So it was with this man, it's a repeated type of deal that since he was 5 that he's been, I guess, visited or abducted.
Is it like a bloodline thing? Is it, maybe his parents experienced it as well and kind of passed it on to him, or is it?
There seems to be a connection with certain bloodlines. Yes, I'm working with a man whose whole family was abducted. He was abducted, and now his kids have been abducted, and he's a frequent flyer. He goes out once or twice a week, according to him, and all sorts of stuff. And I know this man. I respect him. I highly respect him. He's a really smart man, and I keep trying to tell him there is a way out. In fact, I was looking through my files the other day for. I'm actually redoing the Alien Interview book, which we did. I'm updating it, and it'll be a much larger book than the original one. We're calling it Alien Interviews 2, Further Evidence, lots of new information. Some of the old information is there too, because some of those interviews are really good. But we're updating many of the interviews, lots of new interviews, lots of correspondence where people write in. And over and over and over again, the case is made that they've either heard me on Coast or Coast to Coast or a radio show or TV or whatever, and they stop their abductions by evoking the name of Jesus. And I realize some people out there will roll their eyes and start scoffing, but they don't understand what's going on here. It's not religion. It's not the church that most people, think is what this stuff is. We're looking at a name above all names that paid the price on Calvary 2,000 years ago and ended the cosmic war. won the cosmic war once and for all. Checkmate on Calvary. He
That's
won,
right.
and he's coming back. And at
Yes,
some
he
point,
is.
this crazy planet that we're on, which is still under the rule of the fallen one, and this is what we see manifesting everywhere, all around us. It's crazy right now, and only getting crazier. It's building up to a climax. He is coming back. It's not the religion that most people think it is. So when someone evokes the name of Jesus, when they cry out for him for help, that's how the abduction phenomenon is stopped. And I get it over and over. If it was one guy, he'd go, well, I'm glad that works for you. It's straight across the board.
I told John after we talked, I said, I thought the coolest thing that you said about the conference you was at, that you had pastors and associate pastors for some of the first times actually show up to get some insight and some information on this subject, and it really blew me away, because it's kind of like, it's that day and time now where there's so much going on that involves these types of things that you're not going to explain them away with just some bogus random story that these pastors and these shepherds out here, they need to know, because it's definitely real. And I mean, the fact that you have the actual scientific proof to prove that it's real, I mean, they need to get the information and get it into their people's hands. But it's just incredible to me, and I don't know what to say other than it just blows my mind. This stuff, we got all this stuff going over in the Middle East, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about it, but I actually wanted to kind of backtrack to Peru thing real quick and have you speak on these structures that you found and the fact that they're lining up, and the technology that's involved in them things that 2, 3, 4,000 years ago, that how in the world can these things have been built by just simple man,
Right. Yeah, the ley lines, to me, when you were talking about that was something that it was so amazing to me that that they were found on these grid lines. Can you talk? Me and Dan know about this stuff. We've researched everything you've done just about. But can you tell the audience that's listening a little bit about that? Because to me, that's some of the most amazing evidence.
Yeah, no doubt.
And again, I'll be revisiting the whole ley line thing in Volume 2, because it's important that people understand that there was an ancient grid system that was more than likely destroyed in the flood, and that grid system is back in the form of the Internet and the satellites, which are all above us constantly. Right now it's benevolent, but at some point in time it will be used to enslave every human being on the planet. That's where it's going, and that will all tie in with the mark of the beast. I mean, it's happening right in front of our eyes, and most people don't understand it. What was one of the most startling discoveries, and this was originally saw it on America on Earth, the television show, but it's the work of this man, by the boy, actually, young man. The kid's 22 years old. He's a college student. Might be 23 now. His name is Kelsey Stone, and he's noodling around on Google Earth. The backstory is his family owns what they have labeled and call America's Stonehenge, and it's in New Hampshire, and a henge is a circle, and this thing has been carbon dated about 4,000 years old. Well, so Kelsey Stone is just messing around on Google Earth, okay? And on the outskirts of the henge in New Hampshire are standing stones, and these standing stones correspond with the solar calendar. In other words, the longest day of the year, the summer solstice. There's a standing stone about 100 yards or whatever away from the center of the henge, and you would stand in the center of the henge on the morning of the longest day of the year, or the summer solstice, and the sun would come up right over that stone. Well, corresponding to that, on the other side of the henge is another standing stone, which would be the shortest day of the year, the winter solstice. Then, of course, you've got the vernal equinox and the autumnal equinox. We just had the autumnal equinox just a little while ago, last weekend, in fact. And so those are days of equal light and equal, 12 hours of darkness, 12 hours of light. So Kelsey Stone is on Google Earth, and he draws a line from the center of the henge, which in New Hampshire, out to the summer solstice standing stone. And he keeps going and going and going a little further. Anyway, thousands of miles later, he winds up in Stonehenge, England, splitting the center trilithon in the Stonehenge circle. That line intersects the center of the center trilithon in Stonehenge. The trilithon is two upright rocks which are buried in the ground and a horizontal piece.
Wow.
That's what it is.
That's amazing technology, for somebody that existed thousands of years ago. That has to be something.
There is no way.
Yeah,
I talked to a surveyor. There's absolutely no way to do that in antiquity. None.
Exactly.
But it gets better. Kelsey extended the line further and further, and now he winds up in Beirut, Lebanon. Whoa! So now Beirut, Lebanon goes from Beirut, Lebanon to Stonehenge to England, to Stonehenge, New Hampshire. And what amazed me, and he understood this, but he stopped there. They all stopped there when it was the home of the Phoenicians. Well, we need to dig deeper, with all due respect. The Phoenicians are the descendants of the Canaanites, and the Canaanites are a Nephilim tribe, which is listed in the book of Numbers. Right. Now we've got a smoking gun, but it gets better. I had one of my researchers extend the line further, and this will be on the trail of a Nephilim too, because no, he didn't do it, because he's not dealing from a biblical paradigm like I am. He doesn't understand what happened on Mount Hermon, like the Book of Enoch tells us. When you extend the line further, you wind up at the base of Mount Hermon, which is where the 200 watcher angels descended in the days of Jared.
That is incredible, and
that's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, that's totally incredible, and that's I mean that I don't know
that in itself to me is proof of something. Just that. I mean that's not even like a quarter or even like a tenth of what you talk about as far as proof goes, but that right there is enough to make anybody stop in their tracks and really think. And it amazes me that most mainstream science steers away from this. And I think we all have our theories on why. But what's your theory on why they're steering away from this?
Why? Who's steering away from it? Mainstream archaeology?
Mainstream science. Why are they teaching evolution instead of teaching the facts?
Well, again, all this, and this is why we're on the trail, all this slams the evolutionary model. It shows that there was diffusionism. In other words, the evolutionary model and the archaeological model for most people is this idea of isolationism, that people didn't move around, that each culture sort of just sort of grew up until, let's say, Columbus era, when people started traveling around the globe. Well, we're trying to say, no. People were running around on this globe thousands of years before Columbus, thousands of years. And we've got proof of that. What that does is it bolsters the biblical paradigm. It bolsters the biblical model. If there really are 8, 9, 10, 11-foot giants with red hair, that goes against the evolutionary model. It goes up against the Beringian model, the Bering Strait at the end of the last ice age.
Yeah.
And these people came across hunting megafauna. And it's just nonsense. It's just absolute nonsense. And look, I'm back into this area, and I'm doing a lot of research into this. And I've discovered some interesting things, which I'm not at liberty to talk about because it won't be published till next year. You'll have to have me back again, and I would love to come and discuss some of the newer findings that we're finding that bolster the idea that, guess what? The archaeologists said people didn't know how to measure. Well, what if we can find pictures of these skeletons? And
that'd be great.
That's my whole point. I'll just leave it at that. And what if there's a way to manipulate it because of the computer programs that we have? So if we know the height of one man at 5'8", we can ascertain the skeleton that was dug out of a particular place. And that's all I can say.
I understand
that. And it's 90 years old, and we have a smoking gun. And I mean that we have a smoking gun.
What cracks me up the most, and that's awesome. I can't wait to see it, and I'm excited about it. When you're talking about they can't measure, I remember you saying that the
MDs, the doctors,
they were saying that they didn't have the technology to really measure. I'm thinking my son's 2 years old. He gets my wife's cloth measure that she measures, and he he can sit there and measure out a foot, you know, and he's 2 years old. So I can imagine. I would hope that somebody with a doctorate and
even you know, older back then, the guys, you know, I mean, come on, you know,
it's only 100 years ago. You know, the inch has not changed. Tape measures have not changed. I mean, it's really it's such a straw man argument. It's just absurd. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, and it's like that people, and I understand. You know, we got the people out there that don't believe in God, and we got the people that argue this evolutionary theory. But to argue against something that you know deep down inside like that, like, come on, the doctor 100 years ago didn't know how to measure a femur. You know, it takes stupidity to the next level when it comes to you know, here these guys are developing medicines and doing all these great and wonderful things 100 years ago, but the guy can't read a yardstick. You know, I mean, it just I don't know. I have a hard time with that.
And I agree. It's a straw man argument. It's like, that's absurd. What do you? And they say it with a great authority. Well, the people back then didn't know how to measure. I mean, do you realize how absolutely insulting and absurd your comment is? And it just makes no sense.
Yes, sir. I totally agree. And one of the things too that I've kind of wondered about, and I was thinking about this all week, you know, when I was thinking about talking to you, is, you know, here we got the Smithsonian doing what it does, you know, coming in, collecting remains, doing their thing, you know, kind of brushing everything under the rug. How, I mean, they have to be controlled by a higher power to a degree, and I'm not saying just not supernatural, but, you know, the kind of runners of the world, I guess, the New World Order, if you'd want to say it like that. But, you know, here these people are coming in, and how are they getting the authority to just come in and take over, you know, these sites and stuff? I mean, you know, is that's what's happening, right? They're just kind of coming in, swooping in.
Well, it is, and this is the whole point of Ben Stein's movie, which I constantly quote and show the picture or the clip of when Ben Stein sits down with Richard Dawkins and just says, where did the first self-replicating molecule come from? And the bottom line is Dawkins doesn't know. And he says, well, no one knows. Well, so you don't know how life began. You know, and that's the bottom line. You don't know where we are, what we're doing here, and how we got here. He doesn't know. And yet, you know, we look at the God of the Bible, and everything, you know, tells us that he spoke it. Exactly what Dawkins has trouble with. He spoke everything into existence. And we know that the Word was made flesh. We know who did it. And we know that when he was here, he did exactly the same thing. He would speak to a leper, you know, be healed, bam. The leprosy is changed at the cellular molecular level. People are hungry, bam. You know, fish enough to feed more like 15,000 people because that's what it is. You know, they only counted the men. It's kind of a sexist deal, but they wouldn't count the women and the children, which is fine. That's their culture, and that's what they did. So today we estimate that number of 5,000 should be more like 15,000. How the heck is that possible? You know, he calms the storm. Everywhere he goes, he brings goodness and life. Everywhere he goes.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
You know, it's amazing. And it's like that's because he's the guy that created everything. Because John tells us, I'm starting to preach here a little bit, but
that's all right.
John tells us that all things, the entire universe was made by him. And that nothing was not made without him, period. He made everything. And what's so hard about that? And then he came back and proved it. So, you know, and he's coming back again, and he's really going to prove it once again. So the whole idea, evolution sets up this intellectual vacuum in a person to where, okay, where do we come from? The movie Prometheus last summer is a perfect example of that because in that movie, a man is out in space looking for his creator. That's what he's trying to do. And it's interesting, he finds these guys that seem to have been the creator, and they're giants, and they're mean, and they kill him. It's like, what? Yeah. It's just unbelievable, you know? So,
yeah, I remember watching that. That was definitely, you know, I agree. You know, here he is looking for this, for God, and he finds these guys, and they, you know, I mean, it says it had Nephilim written all over it, you know, and it's.
I agree completely.
It's like, wow, I wonder where these guys are getting their storyline from, you know?
Well, I agree. I mean, it's like, you know, nothing new there. Absolutely not. But, you know, look, Darwinism sets up this intellectual vacuum, and people will accept when ET shows up. In fact, look, let me back up. When Ben Stein sits down with Dawkins and says, well, where do you think it comes from? Dawkins begins to, and this is a highly intelligent man with all due respect, and he is basically promulgating what I have come to call the alien gospel, which is that ET created all life on the universe, right? They seeded us here thousands of years ago. They genetically manipulated early man. Now at this critical juncture in human history, they are back to usher us into a time of peace, prosperity, and knowledge. And that's exactly what Dawkins is promulgating. He's saying that, well, it could have happened about this way, and I'm quoting directly, a race of beings who had to have arrived by some sort of Darwinian process, right, created us and then, created life and then seeded it through it's called panspermia, through the galaxy, and so here we are. But it's like, it's a straw man argument, and it's circular reasoning. Well, where did they come from, Mr. Dawkins? He doesn't know. And he's stumped. He doesn't know. And if he's just honest, well, no one knows. Well, you're right, no one knows. But what he's promulgating is what I'm warning against. When these guys show up, and they will show up, look, this is what Watcher 7's about. In the month of April alone, and that's where I've got hard facts and figures, over 1,000 UFO sightings reported worldwide.
Wow.
1,000 in the month of April 2013. The phenomenon is real, it is burgeoning, it is not going away. People need to understand and wake up that this is with us, and at some point in time, disclosure is going to happen. And that's what Watcher 7 is about, is like a wake-up call to the church, and its companion book, Alien Interviews 2, with all this information, just like we did Watcher 6 with Armored Trail. I said, people like to read, too, and we can get more in-depth with the book than we can, let's say, with the video. They're two different animals, but they're, or two different, what's the analogy I'm looking for? The front legs and the hind legs of a horse. It's taking you to the same place, and that's what they're doing. So I can't wait to get this out. I think it'll be very important for people to check out.
And here we got, I'm sure everybody's read these, the Vatican. So much strange stuff is going on with this place. Not that it's not strange in the beginning, but this whole alien doctrine thing that they're talking about, and baptizing an alien, and it's like, can y'all not see the hype? Before any good, obviously a great deception requires 90% or 95% truth, and then the deception part is inserted in there, and here these people have the biggest, I guess, one of the biggest religious circles in the world, and here they're starting to just gradually pump the masses with these, these snippets of this alien thing, and this, it'd be great to baptize an alien, and then, it's like, but nobody's the wiser, nobody's researching now. I mean, they are, we got folks like you and certain other people, but, Jesus said, he said, the truth has set you free, and until you really get into truth, into His Word, into God's Word, it's like, man's truth is so filled with lies and just deceit. It's like to get in the Bible, people just aren't doing it anymore. They're not, they're not compelled or feel moved to get in the Word of God and study these things out, because Daniel was told to seal up these certain things until the time of the end, and knowledge, increase, and people go to and fro. And then here, John is revealing all these things that the Messiah has given him to reveal, and it's like, there's so much packed in there that it's just, it's so overwhelming, but everybody wants to pick up all these other, all these other books, and it's like, here it is, the creator of the universe has given us, the whole thing, he plainly says, I tell you these things before they happen, so when they do happen, you shall believe, and I don't know, me and John both greatly appreciate the work that you do, because, obviously people like us, everyday people, aren't going to be able to get in and research and get to the places that you have. I mean, you've brought so much to light. It's just, it's incredible to talk to you, and obviously we can't wait till the new stuff comes out, but this stuff is so jam-packed with God written all over it, and what, what the enemy's trying to do to us, and, and nobody out there, gradually starting to trickle in, and I don't even know what else to tell people. You start talking about, you know, the Nephilim and this DNA changing thing, and, you know, them trying to, and you start incorporating this alien abduction thing, and I mean, you get kind of shunned to the side, and it's like, hey, you know, this guy's on another level, you know.
Well, you know, and let me address that, because I've been saying this wherever I go to try to wake the church up. I start pretty much every talk with the same thing, or the same forward, and it's this: that we're the people, Christians. We believe in the virgin birth, talking donkeys, floating axe heads, 2 gold coins which appear out of the fish's mouth so Peter can pay his taxes, staffs which turn into serpents, men who were swallowed by large fish, i.e. whales, and then regurgitated 3 days later, prophets that can foretell the future with pinpoint accuracy, and on it goes, guys that walk on water. You know, this is what we believe. Do we realize how absolutely bonkers this stuff really is? And, you know, when you say it like that, everybody kind of laughs nervously. Well, why is it that we close our minds and we won't look at what the supernatural is manifesting right in front of us? What's wrong with us?
Yeah,
what is wrong with the church? What is wrong with us? Wake up, folks.
Yeah,
Wake up.